Where did you stand on the payroll tax to restore Cherriots service? Did you contribute to the Chamber's effort to oppose it? How did you vote on it? And what is your plan to restore weekend bus service in Salem?
I didn't like the payroll tax. I thought it was not done right, and I think it played itself out the way you could predict the way it was done. I have worked on revenue in this town. I don't think anyone else that I can think of has dealt with revenue the way I've had to deal with it. Mike Swain appointed me to a revenue task force years ago. I chaired the revenue task force. I found out how much work you have to do to create an agreement that you're going to tax one small group to raise money. And that agreement was with the hotel motel operators to increase the hotel motel tax for the transient occupancy tax to use for a variety of city services, including parks and promotion. How do you divide it up, and how does that work? I think the transit district made a fundamental error, and they relied on polling that said, if we poll him, will you vote for it? But we won't, or if I tax him, not you, will you vote for it? Well, that's the would you like a free pony tax.
But isn't that the common model in
No,
other cities?
it's a terrible model. It's a terrible
I know
model.
you're saying it's terrible, but isn't it the common?
No.
That's not the model in Portland or Eugene?
No, you don't understand. Let me explain it to you, because I think you've been misinformed on how this works. 40 years ago, this transit district formed without a payroll tax. Huge mistake. It never should have formed without a payroll tax. It was a mistake. And they got it in state legislation. That's a state law. That's not some local tax. Okay? Nobody's voted in a local payroll tax to pay for transit. That was done by the state legislature as they set up transit districts. When they missed that opportunity, they should have stopped cold. They should have. But we had a property tax system at that time without Measure 5 that said, well, maybe we can go forward. They did not explore whether or not that represented a sustainable model for how to finance something as complicated and expensive as a transit system. So come forward 40 years and you look around and say, well, who can we tax that it will pass? And what they did was go out and poll the do you want a free pony tax? You don't pay, they pay. And I think that's a terrible way to do it. They did not sit down with the business community, and you know, we can call it the chamber, you can call it whatever you want, but they didn't sit down with them and negotiate this thing out. How are we gonna do it? How do we do it where you guys would sign up? What's the package look like? Are there alternatives? What can we do? It was just put on the ballot. They did not talk to the other local governments about whose turn is it to go out? How are we gonna do this? How does this fit to other taxing strategies? It was, we're right and we're going out. Okay.
Now let me get clear what
I
you're
think
saying.
that's wrong.
That maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. And that's a blueprint for acrimonious, community disrupting conflict during the election.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
In other words, because you said it played out, your earlier comment, it played out exactly as you would have expected.
Oh, I think it did. I think it just said, it set up a polarized tax debate. And they're not all tax debates are negative. I mean, there are discussions that can occur in advance that set up all of us going out together saying, let's go for this thing. There's no debate here. We need Saturday, Sunday, and evening transit here. There's no debate at all. I think that everyone agrees on that completely. The question is, how are we going to pay for it? And you can't just say my way or the highway to whole groups of people. It doesn't work that way when you raise taxes. It just doesn't work well that way. That is not the way the school district does it. They go out and do some of the biggest bonds in the history of the state of Oregon, and people here vote for them because they make the case, they work with all interests, they got everybody on board. All this stuff is done, the groundwork is done. These are complicated things to do. I think they couldn't have done a worse job in terms of running that thing. And I think they got back exactly what you would expect if you don't do your spade work on this kind of stuff.
They sure ran away with their tail between their legs because, polling, and you're right,
Yeah,
which
it was great.
wasn't measuring reality. If you narrowly miss, 52 to 48%, that's one thing, but it was wiped out.
Oh, it was, and sadly so, because it hurts.
Right, sadly
it
so.
hurt the transit effort here. It was done wrong, and I don't blame anybody. I get the concept. Well, let's poll it and see what sells. That's always that's a
How about the fact
Wrong
that
way to
there
do it.
are
Wrong
there are
strategy.
payroll taxes elsewhere supporting it?
Well,
I mean,
that's part of the state law, and it should have been done here too, and it was defeated here by the business community. And payroll taxes are probably the correct way to pay for this, but you've got to have some agreement. And pardon me, but I'm not sure what the factors are that bring the business community to support for this. I really am not. I don't think it's the small amount of money involved. I think there are other things here. I know what we go through. Look at the gyrations we're going through talking about a police station that we all agree we need. We're just going through all kinds of gyrations, trying to find our way there that brings as much of the community to the table as possible. I know how hard this is to do, and they didn't do the work.
So I understand your answers to the three-part question here. That the last part, how would you plan to restore it? You're saying that payroll tax is appropriate, but they didn't go the right.
I think it's part. I think it could be part of a
should have been initially.
Could have been the right
ago.
answer. It could have been the right answer. It wasn't done right. It could be a mix of taxes. It could be a mix of taxes, fares, fees. I don't know. What we need is some leadership in this city that's committed to transit, committed to seeing it funded appropriately, committed to having it serving the people we need to have served, because we got people who desperately need this service. I hear from them. I talk to them. I get blamed for their problem, whether I vote for it, don't vote for it, agree with it, disagree with it. I'm in office. They think the city runs this thing. Well, then I'm willing as mayor to bring everybody together and just and lock the doors until we find a solution. And you know what? I can. And I think that's important. And when you look at my candidacy, I can bring the chamber into a room and talk to them.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only candidate who can do that. I'll be honest with you. And I think it's important that we have a mayor that knows how to do that kind of stuff. That's what I do for a living, is that kind of work. I know I can get T.J. Sullivan and Marcia Kelly, who I've known for 50 years and went to college with,
Right.
into a room and talk this thing through. There is a solution here. Nobody looks at this, and I know there's going to be TJ, God, what a... I know TJ, and I know Marcia, and I know how much they agree on the need for people having transit, and it is profound agreement, and the only problem's the money. Well, that's, my God, if you agree on the goal, the money is just, that's just,
Makes it happen.
yeah, that's just all that is a tool. So how do we put that together? How do we make that happen? I'm just convinced we can do it, and it's going to be one of the first things I do as mayor is get people back to the table on this question. We have got to get this solved. People who need transit, it isn't like transit optional. It's transit essential for them. People can't come to work.